I'm heading north for a couple of days bike ride, and I needed a place to leave my car, so I asked Donnie Campbell, my friend, if I could just leave it outside his house. And he said, yeah, well, why don't you come up and stay with us for the night before you go? And so that's what I'm going to be doing. I've spoken to Donnie on the podcast twice before, episode 2 and episode 35, and both of those have been really about running, because Donnie is a star trail runner. And the first one tells us how he got into it, and then podcast 35 was all about his record-breaking fastest known time for doing all the Munros self-propelled. That's all 280 odd of Scotland's high mountains, and he not only ran them, he cycled and kayaked to the ones on the island between them as well. And I have a feeling that that's where Donnie really got into off-road biking, and that's what we're talking about today. Donnie Campbell, not the runner, Donnie Campbell, the cyclist.
Yeah, I didn't own a bike until I decided I was going to do a Munro round, and then I thought, well, if I'm going to cycle in between the Munros, I should probably need to get a bike. So yeah, I got a bike and start of 2020. So 2019, end of 2019, I had borrowed my mate's old road bike and started doing a bit of cycling and then 2020 eventually bought a bike, and did some cycle training for the Munro round. After that, so I did the Munro round. After that, I kind of decided to do something different through injuries and did some more cycling, and found I actually really enjoyed gravel cycling. I think it was a combination of I'd done all the Munros, done all the tops, and now like the gravel bike was kind of opening up different glens that I would not normally run up, because it's just Land Rover tracks for that. So, you know, going in by Carrera or stopping for lunch, it's just nice and sociable. Going up to Cape Wrath, like never been to Cape Wrath until I got a gravel bike and thought, oh, I'll cycle up there because that looks cool. I've always wanted to go to Cape Wrath. So it's that kind of thing. It's opened up areas that I've not been to before and opened up different types of adventure.
But let's be honest, you were a little bit scathing about road cyclists, weren't you? All the cafe stops and things.
I still am. Like, you're only working half the time on the bike. That's why I probably enjoy it so much. Like, you only cycle on the uphill and then freewheel on the downhill. Yeah.
If only life was all downhill, right? Yeah.
And cycling is a lot easier than running. It's probably why I'm enjoying it quite a lot. Not really, it's a different sport, but generally it's kinder on my body as wear and tear. So,
but specifically the gravel, the road stuff doesn't really appeal. I mean, you had to do it for the Munro, but you have you still got your road bike? I mean, do you go out on it at all?
I still have my mate's old road bike. It's attached to my turbo upstairs, and I'll occasionally take the notion to go out and maybe do the Loch Ness Tap if like the trails are waterlogged and kind of feel like it. But generally it's gravel. I try and avoid busy roads just for it's not fun. And gravel is what I enjoy is still kind of getting into the hills. Like you can get up to like 800, 900 metres on a gravel bike in Scotland by going up the Corriac Pass and then up onto Corriac Hill. So you're still getting up high and still exploring. And you get away from the roads. It's still something you couldn't drive to in your car, but on a gravel bike you can get to that location. So,
but not content with going out gravel biking, you had to start setting fastest known times. Badger Divide was the first?
Badger's Divide was the first.
Is it Badgers or Badger?
I have no idea.
Okay, anyway.
I was so ill prepared for that when I ended up doing the wrong route. So
maybe it should be Badgers, because there's two versions of it. Yeah,
there's two versions. So actually I was planning on doing the Anturas more, which was Glasgow to Cape Wrath. And the way that came about was, so basically 2021, I was like, okay, there still wasn't many races happening post-COVID. It's like, I need another challenge. I need something to do. So I started training to try and do an FKT on the Cape Wrath Trail from Fort William to Cape Wrath running. And an old injury flared up, which is basically between my L4 and L5, I've got narrowing of the disc. So when I do a lot of flat trail running, not flat because I'm still running for Cape Wrath, but flat for me, it inflames the nerve and I get like pulling in the groin and glute. So I have to be careful of how much training in the flat I do. So when that started to flare up, I was like, I'll jump on the bike. And then I knew about a route that went from Glasgow to Cape Wrath. And I've never been to Cape Wrath. So it's like, great, I can still go to Cape Wrath. I just do it on the gravel bike. So this is my steep learning curve to cycling. So went down to Glasgow to do the Cape Wrath Trail. And I think I made it 3 kilometres and I broke my front spoke. And because I'd crashed the bike before, it had a bad buckle, and I was like, oh, freak it, and I haven't even got it at Glasgow, and I failed already.
This doesn't happen when you're running, does it?
Yeah, it doesn't happen when you're
I've
running.
snapped a lace, I'll have to stop.
Yeah, so basically that was, I can't remember, that might have been a Friday evening or something. And the reason I was starting early was because like crap weather was coming in, so I've kind of convinced myself the weather wasn't going to be that bad, and managed to get by a new wheel in Glasgow the following morning. And instead of going to Cape Wrath, I was like, oh, well, I'll just cycle home to Inverness and do the Badgers Divide. And I just Googled Badgers Divide GPX file, downloaded it, didn't think anything of it, did it. The weather was horrendous, like dry for the first hour, and then literally I remember cycling over Rannoch Moor and descending down a river, not a trail, and I was just constantly wet, like horrendous conditions. And I'm a fair weather cyclist, I don't cycle in the rain because I just run. And I did that and only find out like a couple of days later I had done the Scott Duro version, which is like the easier version of the two. So I was like, all right, I'll go back and do the full fat version the next time. So I did that, and that was like 2 FKTs in the Badgers Divide in 2021, and I also went and did the Anturas Moor.
Right, let's just separate these two for people who aren't sure. The Badgers Divide, Glasgow to Inverness, and it kind of goes up the middle. So you're going up through the railway line for quite a bit of it, aren't you? You're cutting not necessarily the Glasgow one, but you're doing us almost a straight line with Killin and all through those places. So it's quite a challenging route among big mountains, but of course big mountains that you will know well. Only for this time you're cycling along the valley. Now the other thing you've mentioned a couple of times is Anturas Moor, which is, I think, is the big trail. I think that's Gaelic for something like that, or the Moor will be
the big trail.
And it was invented by or designed or pulled together, I suppose, by a group of mountain bikers. I think David Wilson's one of them, based in Fort William. And Obscuro Mondo. I think
that's the club that's behind that.
Is their club, and it changes a little bit from time to time with access restrictions, but this is not a trail in the sense that there are signposts. It's more of a notion than an idea of a trail, and it runs all the way to Cape Wrath. So probably rated as the hardest trail to cycle in Scotland, I would have thought, just by its duration, although there's a Highland Trail 550, of course, which is
I think the Highland Trail 550 would be the hardest because that's pure mountain biking and hike a bike, whereas
there's a lot of it anyway. It's not pure, but there's an awful lot of it.
Whereas Anturas Moor, you can do it on a gravel bike, and there is only one short hike a bike section near the north coast, near Inverness. But I've looked at the Highland Trail 550 route. And it's debatable whether you'd be quicker running it or mountain biking it, to be honest with you, because there's that much.
Because that's a loop, isn't it, from Tyndrum?
It's a loop from Tyndrum.
It actually changed a couple of times, I believe.
Because it goes through the Fisher Fields, which is absolutely beautiful, but not really cycleable.
It goes through the Fisherfield Forest?
No, the Fisher Fields, it cuts through the Fisher Fields. I'm not entirely sure, but...
Right, okay. Well, and apart from the long road in from Poolew, there's literally no tracks there to speak of. So yes, that would be a challenge. Okay, but the plan had been, as I understand it, you wanted to do an Anturas Moor fastest known time, but then they went and announced there's going to be a race. So just tell me about how that came about, or how what was the competition like for that? When did you start? Where did you go? All that.
Cool. So we're still 2021. So I'd done 2 Badgers Divide, I think, by that point. I decided to do the Anturas Moor as an FKT, but before I knew there was a race. So I did that, and I did that supported, because that's what I've always done when I've been trail running. It's like, if you're doing something long, you'd have support, and didn't realise that actual bike packing, most things are unsupported, i.e. you use like the shops en route, you don't have your long-suffering wife following you in a car, sleep-deprived, feeding you Snickers bars and Mars bars at God knows what time. So the first time I did Anturas Moor, I think I was about 33 hours or something, or 33 or 36 hours. I'm terrible with times. So I did that, must have been August, and then the race came up, and I was like, okay, I'll do the race, and put it down unsupported within the race. And ironically, I did exactly the same time.
Wow.
I think I was like 10 or 20 minutes quicker in the race.
So you presumably this is one of the things I thought I wanted to talk to you about, is what is Donnie Campbell's version of bikepacking? Because we have spoken a couple of times, and I remember in the first podcast we did, which is episode 2, going back into the depths of lockdown, you were talking about that run from Glasgow to home to Skye, and you discovered that you could run for a certain period of time right through the night, and you were fine. It was much later you hit the wall. So what's your version of bikepacking when you are racing?
So likes of that race is 30 plus hours. It's not really bikepacking because I'm not sleeping anywhere. I kind of go with, I'm all in. If I don't make it, a DNF. So, and I was touch and go on the Anturas more because I got really cold and I wish I had packed more clothes during the night. I remember cycling up past Ben Wevis, so up past Garve, and I'm quite close to home. I was like, I could be home in like an hour or so. Just turn around, absolutely freezing. But yeah, so I take a bit of risk on that, not safety wise, because obviously if I was that cold I could have just cycled home along the road, but I was kind of going through it. I wish I packed more layers. I wish I just packed maybe a sleeping bag so I could lie down for like 10-20 minutes, but because you haven't got that luxury, you just have to keep going, and by the morning you're fine.
Because most people who would do Anturas more would do that over several days, and would have a tent, a sleeping bag, yada yada.
Yeah, so
but in a race all that goes out the window.
Yeah, and that type of race, it's short enough that you can get by without stopping. So, yeah, I can go for about 40 plus hours, maybe 50 hours without sleeping. So, yeah, I could do that without having to carry a sleep system. So, yeah, that's kind of that. But then also I went and did the French Divide, which definitely requires sleeping because it's like 2,000 kilometres long.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Where do you want a cup? You have a mouthful of your tea? I sat here in your kitchen, you've very kindly made me a cup of tea. And I finished mine, you hardly started because we've been talking so much. Where does the French Divide go from and to? Because I seem to remember sending you a text from someone who'd said, he's doing the French Divide. My God, that's probably the hardest bikepacking race there is. And you went, oh, cheers. So tell me about the route.
So the route starts basically near Dunkirk, so Bréjig's right on the French-Belgian border, right on the shore, and it finishes just inland from Bayreuth in the Basque Country, so you're literally maybe 30 kilometres from Bayreuth. And I did ask the organisers at the finish, I was like, it would have been nice to just cycle and do a coast to coast and touch my feet, and he's like, it's the Basque Country, it's about the ambience in this French accent, like I speak pidgin French, and I must admit the finish was very chilled out. It was like in a small village with like 2 hotels, and kind of it was very chilled. So basically it went from there in the north all the way down to the southwest.
So how much are we talking about? Any road on this, or?
So it's mainly off-road. There is bits of single track, like small roads. It's classed as a mountain bike race, which I would say it's definitely a mountain bike race, even though I did it on a gravel bike.
Okay.
And I knew going into it, most people would be on a mountain bike, and most people that finish it are on mountain bikes. But because I haven't got much mountain bike skills, and my bike handling skills aren't the best, I thought, well, if I go for a racier gravel bike setup, at least I can make up speed on the less technical stuff. And then when it gets to the technical stuff, I'm not going to be able to utilise a good downhill mountain bike or a hardtail anyway, because I'll be going slow down anyway. So I'm going slow or walking down a gravel bike. I kind of weighed out that option. So yeah, that was kind of...
Well, rationalised it anyway.
Yeah, rationalised it in my own head.
Buying another bike, yeah. So what sort of stuff are you carrying there? Your sleep systems? How much stuff do you have? I mean, did you weigh? Describe me what you've got, on the bike.
So got on the for the French Divide, my sleep system was a non-sleeping bag, one of the lightest ones. I can't remember what it was, but yeah.
Down or?
No, Primaloft.
Right.
The reason I thought I went with Primaloft, at least if it gets wet, it's still going
keep
to
you warm.
warm. And again, it's French in the middle of August. It's a heat wave. Not going to have too much issues with being really, really cold. So with that in mind, I went for a bivy option, which I actually never took out of the bag, was Sol's emergency bivy. So they're like the size of an apple.
Yeah.
And it's just a really thin, like tinfoil plastic bivy bag. But because
I keep two in the car actually for any sort of like winter break now.
but because like you can sleep under man-made objects and stuff like that, so I never actually used it. Even when it did rain one night, I managed to find some abandoned like garage with like shelter overhead. So yeah, that was the sleep system. I had like a
And as part of your sleep system, is it that I can go until I find somewhere? I mean, that rationale part of it?
Yeah,
right.
so rational part is like...
It's not you're going to camp. It's not like people might be going to have a holiday and camping somewhere. It's just I can ride for 40 hours. I know I can ride for 40 hours without sleeping. I can go until there is some shelter.
Yeah, I can go and find some shelter. I can keep going.
So you're often using the light riding through the...
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so that's another story. I'll come on to that about the French,
Okay,
about
right.
how unprepared I was.
Okay. I did see a tweet something about your electronics dying, but okay.
Yeah.
As I say, come
Yeah,
back
so
to
back to the sleep system, it was that and like one of these like half air mat things that blew up, which punctured after 2 or 3 days. Because I was just throwing it down, not realizing to make sure there's no sharp.
Yeah.
So that was that, and then I had like maybe a pair of shorts and t-shirt for sleeping in, and a down jacket just in case I got cold, and a waterproof jacket. I think that was it, and maybe gloves.
one pair of shorts.
Yeah, one pair of bib shorts,
Right.
one cycling top, and then basically a change of clothes, shorts and t-shirt, and a spare pair of socks as well. Spare pair of socks.
And are you quite happy with that? I mean, presumably you're not going into hotels that often to start washing out your shorts.
No, I had one hotel stop for I think it was 8 days. Pause that a second, I'll find out how long it takes. I've got the railway card up here.
Okay. Because while he's doing that, one of the things that always gets me is trying to sleep in your shorts, and I don't know how anybody can do that. But, but the answer to that is you don't stop. Oh, here's your brevet.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
8 hours, 8 days and 20 hours. So yeah, I stopped once in a hotel to charge up my electrics. So I washed the bib shorts then. And then I had an enforced stop near Clermont-Ferrand where I had a major blowout of a rear wheel. So completely ripped my sidewall. And I had to get back to what I'm good at, which was running. So I had to run, 10k into town. And I ran maybe about 5k in cycling shoes, which was most uncomfortable. And then someone passed by, offered me a lift in. So, I was running with a bike and a puncture. And
now you just sped through that, but that's actually a major thing. That would stop anybody's bike ride in their tracks. The fact that you haven't just sort of damaged a tyre here, it's irreparable.
Yeah.
You've split it. Now, is that because you were using a gravel bike, do you think?
No,
I mean, did you take a knife to a gunfight as well? Maybe?
No, because it was on the least technical bit of gravel road. I was morning was coming up, so it was quite early in the morning. I was just got through the night. I was feeling actually quite good. I was actually feeling quite good at the time. I just got through quite a rough patch, and I was just spinning down a quite a wide gravel track, a bit of rock, and the next thing all there was, and I stopped, and I was like, oh no! Looked at the back wheel. And literally, the sidewall had been slashed massively. Something spun up and slashed it.
There's no way your tyre boot's going to sort that.
No way the tyre boot's going to sort that. Nothing. Yeah.
And then, so you were quite a way off road. I mean, did you have to run a long way?
Yeah, so I was kind of knew I was not too far from, I can't remember the name of the town. It's just up from Clermont-Ferrand. It's a really touristy black place that lacks something. And it's I know I'm not far away from there because I was I'm getting food there. That's where my head was. There's a food stop there. So it's Googled bike shops and stuff. And I actually phoned a friend because he knows more about bikes than me. So this is me kind of look, I've got a massive ripped tire. What can I do about it? And he's yeah, you're pretty screwed. So went into town.
Is this Mark?
No, this was Dave
Murdoch.
Murdoch.
Right,
Dave Murdoch. he speaks French as well. He lives in France, so he lives in Argenteuil. So I was like, phoned him. It's like, and he's good at mountain bike stuff.
But was there a bike shop nearby?
There was a bike rental company nearby, a single guy in a hut. So went to see him, and thankfully he spoke really good English. He actually went to university in Wales and played rugby. The nicest guy you'll meet, 'cause I ended up spending the night in his house. So this is kind of like, why I really like the French Divide. It's loads of little stories like this. So basically I got down into town after the couple dropped me off and went to see him. And my friend who spoke French had phoned him up just to explain, because I wasn't sure if he was going to speak English. So he already knew I was coming. And I showed him his tyre, and he's like, oh yeah. And he's like, we haven't got anything that's going to work, so we're in a big mountain bike area. So it's mainly mountain bike area.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'll phone my friend who's the local
and
mechanic.
none of that,
in town.
sorry, just to explain, none of his tyres, mountain bike tyres, they're just too wide.
Yeah,
There's no way they'd fit your wheels.
Yeah, too wide, they don't fit.
Yeah.
They wouldn't fit my frame. So even if they're like 700C, so the size of the tyre, I've got tyre limit. Clearance on my
it'd be rubbing
gravel
against
bike
your
frame.
forks or your
the
chain stays at the back.
I've only got 42 mil clearance for the Cervelo I ride, so yeah. So the local bike mechanic, who also spoke great English, came and looked at the tyre and went, yeah, you need a new tyre. And they're like, so they actually took time to try and source me one that day in the local area, and they couldn't get anything that would do the job. They managed to find me a gravel tyre, but it was a slick, and it was like one of these ones, if I knew I put it on, it'd puncture straight away. So the option was, they came up with like, well, you can order something of Ultrix, which is basically like a French wiggle site, and we can get it delivered next working day before midday to the local supermarket. And I was like, well, that's the option I'm going to have to go with. My mind was all over the place by this point.
Yeah.
I'm like halfway into the race. I actually think it's over, but I was like, I had to get the bike repaired, 'cause if I wasn't going to finish the race, I had to get to Clermont-Ferrand, which is like 50.
You got to get home.
Yeah, I got to get home. This is the thing about bike packing, you just can't quit. You got to get home somehow.
Stick your thumb out with the bike on your shoulder.
Yeah, so I was like, well, I need to get the bike fixed. And actually, I wasn't entirely sure which way I was going to cycle until I actually started cycling the following day.
Oh, you mean... Okay, so they got you this overnight. You got it on.
Yeah, so basically...
And you were posting all this stuff on your Insta. Yeah, I remember all the videos. It was like, I was following along thinking, crikey, look what's going through.
They ordered it up for me. I paid for it. And like the guy who owned the mountain bike rental company was like, come stay with me for tonight. You'll not find a place to stay in this town because it's fully booked, because it's French holidays, really touristy. And I was like, okay, that's fine. So really nice guy, took me home. And we just... sat up, chatted for a while, and I really should have slept, and eventually got some sleep. And then he dropped me off at the supermarket in the morning beside the bakery, and I just had to wait for the tyre to come in. Got the tyre, got like the sealant and everything, so I could set up tubeless. And it wasn't until that point I had decided which way I was going to go, because I couldn't just start cycling from there. If I was to finish the French Divide, I had to cycle back up the hill, back to where I left the route. The other option was to cycle to Clermont-Ferrand, and I had plotted two routes on my bike computer while I was waiting for the tyre to come, so I hadn't really decided on which way I was going to go, and my head was a mess. It was just like, I really don't know. And then I thought, okay, I'll just cycle up the hill and I'll get back to where I left the route, and I'll just see how I feel. And yeah, I just got going and got into it again.
So how many days are you into it by now?
That would have been maybe 5-6 days.
And still looking at what, 7 to go, 6 or 7 to go.
Let me think. So I started that the following morning from probably about 10 o'clock. Cycled all the way up over the highest point in Central Massif.
Because it gets really hilly now, doesn't it? This is where the hills really start.
So you're in the Central Massif of France, so it's really massive. The highest point goes over like the ski resort and the Central Massif, and I think it was like 2,800 or something like that, 2,800 metres. And then I cycled
down. It's all the volcanoes as well.
Yeah. Then I cycled down, and then we hit a thunderstorm. And I slept that night in like a shed while it was raining. And then I had one more sleep, and then I cycled through the last night to finish. So however many days that was.
All right. So you amazing that you managed to finish.
Yeah, I managed to finish.
I mean, were you thinking, I'm going to get there and everybody's gone?
No, because you got the tracker, you can see where everyone else is, and the French Divide, they don't call it a race. They don't post the results. It's all about finishing. And the slower people can start on like the Saturday. I can't remember. Saturday evening they started, and the faster people started on the Sunday evening. So I started on the Sunday evening. So obviously, the faster people overtake everyone that started the following evening.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I was probably still quite high up the field after taking that enforced 24 hours off, because it was literally from the time I broke the bike, the time I got back on the course was roughly about 24 hours. So yeah, I started passing people, so people that were a day ahead, and also maybe a couple of people that started that night. And it wasn't till the very last day with about 50 odd K or maybe 60 odd K left that I eventually got back into second place. So I was chasing someone who was in second place from after that breakdown, and I eventually got back into second place with about 60k to go. And that was purely because I decided to cycle through the last night. So kind of refused, didn't sleep, and just cycled like however long left through round by the bottom of the Pyrenees.
Wow.
And then passed them in the morning. He was an absolute destroyed wreck. And then he finished like 3 or 4 hours behind me after that. But yeah, so
you ended up in first place.
Second.
Oh, you ended up in second. Okay,
Yeah.
I thought you said you were in second and then you passed.
No, I ended up
Sorry.
in second. The winner was like a full 24 hours ahead of me.
That's do you know what it is? I hadn't realised you'd done that well, because I didn't hear. I for some reason I must have got taken away from my Instagram. I hadn't actually realised you'd come second.
Yeah.
Wow.
But they don't post the results. It's not really a race.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
not really second, but
Yeah.
people are like.
Yes. Okay. What they say about what sportives are for people who like to pretend they're racing, and audaxes are for people who like to pretend they're not racing. That's really, really impressive. And this is for someone who only really got sensibly on a bike 3 years earlier.
Yeah, in 2
years.
Yeah.
3 years earlier.
2 years.
2 years earlier.
2 years.
Crikey.
So yeah, I learned a lot. Like I was so naive. Like literally the first couple of days, it was like I was yo-yoing with like the guy who eventually finished third, because I was like, oh, cafe, I'll just stop here and get a can of Coke. Oh, supermarket, I'll stop here.
Yeah.
Not realising he had literally packed his bike so he could go non-stop for the first 48 hours without having to stop for a supermarket. And I was like, any supermarket I passed, just here, and didn't realise how much time I was actually wasting. But I was like, then I soon clicked on that actually I had to like fill up with like 10 croissants or 20 croissants, and then jump back on my bike and cycle for like 24 hours before I could stop again.
It's like they say about time trialing. Time trialing is not, and this must apply to this, because that's what that is really. It's not about going fast. It's about not going slow.
Yeah.
All the time spent off the bike is you're not making the forward progress.
Yeah.
Wow, that's it.
So I learnt that after a couple of days not to spend so much time off the bike.
Every time you go out on a bike I don't mean for social stuff, because we had that ride in the snow, but does every time you go out on a bigger trip like this just have to be a race? I mean, would you ever consider just going out and having a couple of days bimble? Just go, quite fancy seeing where that goes to, and just take it easy. Cool.
Yeah, so I'm competitive. I can't not say I'm not. But the thing I like about cycling is, and especially the French Divide and these type of races, is a lot more adventure compared to ultra running. Don't get me wrong, I still enjoyed running and I still really enjoyed racing at running. But it's very sterile. Like if you DNF, you don't have to worry about getting home. Like you just pull out a checkpoint, there's a bus home, or someone comes and picks you up. You pull out in the middle of France, you still got to get back to Dover to get your car. You pull out in the middle of somewhere doing an FKT, you've got to find a train station to get home. It's more of an adventure. You haven't got aid stations every 10 or 20k along the hillside that you're meeting people. Or
So it's more self-reliant.
Yeah, more self-reliant, more adventure. Like for the French Divide, literally you get a GPX file and say, cycle across France on this file. There's 3 checkpoints in a 2,000 kilometre route that you got to hit. And basically they're just sitting there in a pub waiting for you to stamp a brevet card, which is just basically a bit of card with a stamp. So, it is an adventure, and I like that kind of stuff. That was the Munro round. So I've always liked having that adventure, whether it be the Munro round or running across Namibia, or the first one running from Glasgow to Skye. So I really enjoy that. So coming back to your answer, yeah, I do like. So I cycled the Hebridean Way with my wife Rachel. We did that at quite a relaxed pace. She might argue maybe not too relaxed.
You were telling me about your mate who came to cycle the North Coast 500. Who on the second day you said you broke the poor guy.
Yeah, well, I thought he was going to be fitter than he actually was. But answer to your question, like I'm happy to go out and just have an adventure. So, for example, last week I plotted a route on Komoot or mapping software that went from my home in Inverness out to Aviemore, which is a bit I've done before. So it goes out over the Tomatin and over Burma Road. But then I realised you can actually link up another off-road section over wind farms all the way back in on the east side of the A9. And that was cool. Like, I've never been there, and I was like, I didn't realise how many little hills there were, and I didn't realise, like, because the trails were still waterlogged, like, coming back was really hard work. It was like cycling through sludge.
You did it that way around.
Yeah.
Actually, one thing we skipped over was your electronics. You mentioned the GPX file there. You had a bit of an epic with those, didn't you? This was on the French Divide still, not having more. What happened there?
So
I know we're chopping and changing a bit, but hopefully listeners can follow this.
Yeah, no worries. So first,
and learn from it as well.
Yeah, learn from it. So French Divide started at like 7 o'clock on the evening for me. So cycling into the first evening, which is fine. I had like front headlight on my helmet, and I had a rear light, and like we've been cycling for like maybe 5-6 hours through the night. I was like, okay, I better charge up my front light because don't want to go flat. I won't be able to make it through the whole night. And I wasn't running dyno, so I was just carrying battery packs. I had plenty of battery packs. I was like, okay, that's fine. Plugged in the front light to the battery pack, and the light went off. And I'm like, what? You know what's going to come down.
It wouldn't stay on while it was charging.
Yes.
Yeah. I've come across this with various lights before. Yeah.
So I learned the hard way. So I actually had to stop on the first night because I ran out of battery power and I couldn't. I ran out of lights. And this is the other thing. So I also had a light from Exposure Lights that I bought just for the race that went on the helmet. So a helmet light for spotting. And I didn't realise, for some reason, you can't charge that off a battery pack, or you need a special cable to battery pack.
It's got a round plug on it.
No, I had the USB round plug to go into it.
But it wouldn't work off a battery pack.
The voltage was something different. Yeah, because I messaged a friend who's sponsored by Exposure Lights going, look, how do I get this to work? It's not working. It's like, it's probably you need a different type of cable or that. Something to do with the voltage. So basically I had to carry I'd carry like this Exposure Light. So it's expensive light. I was like, going to bin this after the first night. That was basically pointless for the rest of the race because I couldn't charge it, and I actually had to buy like a cheap headlamp out the Carrefour for spotting the trails.
Wow.
Wear that in the evening. So yeah, that's the first thing I learned on the first night. So if you're ever doing a bikepacking race, figure out if you can charge your light while
practice.
it's running.
Practice. Do a run with all the things you've got. You're going to be taking, and make sure they work.
And then towards the end, I have no idea what happened to my electronics. Like there was thunderstorms. I'm not sure. Like some of the battery packs didn't hold charge, but then the light I was using went into like it just didn't work. It wouldn't turn off. And
I
when
thought
it turned
everything
on,
got
it was
wet.
flat. I don't think it. I'm not sure if it got wet because
Okay,
it was in the saddlebags. It didn't seem to be wet. There might have been some dampness, but
You see, I thought it had because of that. I put mine in the sort of the frame bag.
Yeah.
I put mine in a poly bag.
Yeah.
I thought I'm going to learn from Donnie's mistake.
I'm not sure if it's dampness or what, but yeah, like the actual main light I had, which is a lensy light, started just playing up. It wouldn't turn off, and when I turned it on, it would just like constantly flash.
Oh, you don't want that either.
And like I tried cycling at night with that, and that was hard work.
No, stroboscopic effect.
Yeah,
it can make you really ill.
Yeah, yeah, give me a sore head.
God.
So I ended up having to buy another light from Decathlon as well at one point during the journey. This was towards the end. This was the last couple of nights. I bought another front light from Decathlon, which was not really bright, but managed to keep me going.
You know, I've often thought that adventures really start happening when things go wrong.
Yeah.
And because if everything just goes to plan, it's, a bit, well, it can be nice if you've planned it well, but it's when things go wrong. They're rubbish at the time. It's definitely type 2 or type 3. But actually, when you're looking back, these are the tales to tell, and hence the conversation that we're having. So, Tell me about the plans for this year, 2023. Here we are at very early April. You're looking very lean. You're looking ready to race.
Yeah, so coming back to that, like the French Divide, I look back with such fond memories. Like, it's an incredible experience. Like, I can't believe I made it. 'Cause there's so many points I was going to pull out. Like, my hands were in bits. Coming back to definitely mountain bike route. The reason I found out it was definitely mountain bike route because I had nerve damage in my hands for like 8 months afterwards. I had tingling in my bottom two fingers on both sides. Like, literally, my hands were in bits. My bum was in bits. Maybe should have carried a spare pair of bib shorts. And there's something, I think my feet were in bits, but like I was so much pain. But by the point I finished, like the pain had numbed out in my hands. Like they were sore, but it got to the point they were no longer sore. It was just that constant pain on the handlebars. But looking back, I had a great time. I don't think I've ever admitted this to anyone. So after I got my bike fixed and I was cycling over the Central Massif, I started crying one night just for no apparent reason, but crying. I was like, this is not right.
No, I
and people have that, and I was like, it's just like you're an emotional wreck. You're on an emotional roller coaster, and like,
but you're putting your body through a lot, and your brain's trying to process it.
And you know, I compare that to the Munro round, and it's like the two different adventures, and like I both really enjoyed them. And it's hard to say which one I enjoy more. Like the Munro round sounds more spectacular, but like the French Divide really pushed me hard, like really pushed me into dark places, and I'm surprised I came out of them. So yeah, look back on fond memories. And back to your original question, what's happening this year? More suffering. So I've got a place in the GB Duro, which is in August, which is a slightly different type of race. It goes from Land's End.
It's Land's End, John O'Groats off-road.
Yeah, off-road. Gravel friendly though.
Yeah.
About 2,000k, but slightly different stage racing. So it's not start the clock, see you in John O'Groats. It is 4 like roughly 500 kilometer stages. And if you're quick, then you maybe get 24, 36 hours recovery before the next stage starts. And if you're towards the end of the pack, you're basically rolling in to roll out as the next stage starts. So that's the main one in August. I've also signed up for a shorter race in Slovenia, which is about 450 kilometers, called Istraland. So it goes into Croatia. It starts in Slovenia and it goes down the peninsula opposite. I can't remember now.
Okay.
Place that everything's like flooded in Italy.
Oh, Venice.
Venice, yeah. Opposite Venice.
The Pulian Peninsula. Yeah, Puglia. Yes, I did a half Ironman down there.
Yeah. So, in Croatia. So that's Istraland. That's where that is. Yeah, sorry, Venice. So we got that in September. And then
Venice is flooded? Oh my God, do they know? Sorry.
Yeah. Doing that in September.
But GB Duro, I mean, that. How long is that?
2,000 kilometers. So
that's our equivalent of the French Divide, really.
Yeah, but it's going to.
But as you say, stage race.
Yeah, stage race. So in my head, it's going to be easier because I'm going to have enforced rest. So basically, the French Divide, I was getting by on maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours sleep max a night, and then one night in a hotel where I had 8 hours to charge everything up, and then another one night where I had the forced rest, which was probably about another 8 hours. So over 9 days, I had 2 blocks of 8 hours sleep, and the rest was like 90 to 2 hour minute, 2 hour sleeps in the evening. So French Divide's going to be slightly different. In my head, I'm like, okay,
GB Duro,
yeah, GB Duro. Go out, cycle hard, cycle through one night, probably finish late the following night, and then get some sleep, and then do it again. So I'm actually going to get more sleep.
Do you know who's also in it this year?
Not really. I don't know who else was in it.
Because Lachlan Morton won the first one, didn't he? There's that famous Rafa film.
Of that's what made me do it.
It's a great film, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what kind of sparked my interest in like bikepacking racing. Was that film? It's like that looks like a great adventure. And they've slightly changed the format now with the GB Duro. You can't just cycle through the end of the stage. You got to wait and have the mass start the next day.
Right.
So Lachlan Morton was able to do like the French Divide. You basically start and go. But they've changed it now that you have to stop and wait for everyone to start again.
But are there still strict rules on support and things?
It's like the normal bikepacking race. You can use shops and stuff like that. But they have changed the slight rules. You're not allowed sleeping under any man-made objects. So I think that's them trying to encourage you to use tents or
Right, so
bivy bags.
you can't go into a hotel if you wanted to.
Yeah, they stopped that. You can't book a hotel, or you can't like go and sleep in a bus shelter or sleep in a toilet block.
Oh, really?
They're enforcing you to actually make you carry a better sleeping system. Well, that was the rules last year. I'm not sure if they'll update them this year.
Okay.
On that. So yeah, that's it. And then
So they were saying that's probably going to be one of these lightweight tents for you.
yeah, lightweight tents. Yeah, looking at a Van Gogh lightweight tent that's like 500 grams. I was trading that off between 200 a 300 gram bivy bag, and it's like, well, extra 200 grams and getting a tent makes a lot of sense.
And it's in August, so hopefully, but a tent is a useful thing in August because it can up here, as we know. Chuck it down.
Yeah, in France you might chance it with a bivy bag because generally it's going to be dry. UK, you're going to get some wet weather in like an 8-day, week and a half period. And then I'm also actually meant to do the West Highland Way race as well, running. So I'm not completely converted just to cycling just yet.
When's that?
That's June. So
do you find it hard to train for them both? I mean, to keep them both going? I mean, you're out running in the morning, and then the last time I was up here, we had to get back because you were doing a Zwift race, and you had to be back for your 1:30 Zwift race.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's a new style of training. Like, if I was just training for racing and running wise, I know what I'm doing. I know the science behind it. Trying to apply the science to... It's a bit more like triathlon training because you're trying to be good at 2 or 3 different sports. So it's pretty much like that. Yeah, trying to find the balance. But because I can kind of switch focus slightly, so I've got a bike race coming up in April. I'm probably more predominantly on the bike until April. And then... doing another bike race in May, but then in May I'll probably switch more focus to running for the West Highland Way race and then switch focus back. So when I mean switch focus, meaning what key sessions, so like the speed sessions I'm doing at the moment are predominantly on the bike, so like tempo sessions, interval sessions I'm normally doing on the bike, but when I'm coming to the West Highland Way I'll probably be doing them running and probably doing a bit more volume running and reduce the cycling volume but keeping that in. So it's finding that right balance that you can kind of switch slightly from one sport to another.
Well, good job. You're a coach and you know what you're doing then, really, isn't it?
Yeah, experimenting on myself.
I have no doubt he will do well. If you want to follow all of Donnie's adventures, he posts a lot on Instagram, and you can find all his social media by searching for Get Active Running. That's his coaching business. I'll also put links in the show notes, where you will also find links to buy me a virtual coffee. It's just a small payment that goes towards the monthly hosting costs for this podcast series. I'm Simon Willis. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.